Oh, you
So,
stay up here, but
let's
we're
try to
not here.
come
I'm
back
gonna get out
to
here
everybody.
and chat, so. Junior high teacher.
Welcome. So this afternoon's panel gives us an opportunity to learn about and discuss the work that the American Federation of Teachers is doing here in Utah. I'm really excited about this one. First, you're going to hear from two union members who are bringing AFT resources to students at Southern Utah University. Phillips is an associate professor of philosophy at SUU, and Lindsey Roper is an associate professor of biology. After that, you're going to hear from Brad Asay, whose bio I read earlier. All of these bios are online, so you can find them there, about the recent legislative issues. And if you don't want to join the union after this panel, then I don't know what to tell you. But if you do, come to this table in the back and we'll talk to you.
Great, okay. So I'm not going to use the mic. I think you can all hear me. I tend to have a teacher voice anyway, so if I'm using... Please use the mic. Okay. I'm going to try really hard not to yell then. My normal thing is to be very loud and project. So we'll try our best not to blow out speakers here. So yeah, thank you to everybody who's organized this, everybody who's attending. Part of what we'd like to do now, Professor Roper and I, is we'd like to share a little bit about what we're doing down in southern Utah and some of the sort of background that resulted in the creation of our chapter at Southern Utah and how that's led us to kind of where we are in our current initiatives. So as you can see, the title of the talk here is Faculty and Students Together, AFT is a Friendly Face in Southern Utah. And so the kind of idea behind that, faculty and students together, as we'll talk about in a moment, is an initiative that we've created together to try to kind of both make AFT at SUU feel slightly less antagonistic. We'll outline some of the ways in which we've been perhaps frustrating to our administration, and then also to kind of find a common ground between faculty, students, administrators, staff, all of the kind of folks who are involved. And so that's kind of the basic idea here. So part of what we want to do is lay out a couple of things. Well, let's give you a quick overview of the talk and then we'll jump in. So first we want to give a little bit of background about SUU, about Cedar City as a broader community, and the reception of union in rural Utah, which you can imagine it was not always favorable. Second, we wanted to introduce this organization with which we're working called Believe in Students. They're a nonprofit organization that's helped us create what we call the FAST Fund, which is faculty and students together, and also refers to how quickly we are able to give money to students, which is, I think, a good thing. Then we'll turn our attention to the ways in which the FAST Fund kind of helps faculty, helps students, and kind of allows us to create partnerships between faculty and administration. Since this is about shared governance, that felt appropriate. And then we'll just draw some general lessons from that sort of a thing. So here's a little bit of background. For those of you who don't know, the AFT chapter is relatively new. I think I reached out to Brad in 2019, maybe the summer of 2019, so before the world went haywire. In part out of frustration and in part because I had just earned tenure, and so I thought, well, if ever there's a time to start a union and piss off our administration, now is it. I have some sort of protection. Now I say that partially as a joke, partially not, because the reason that I wanted to start a union in Southern Utah is because of the culture at Southern Utah University, which I hope is changing, and I hope that we're contributing to that change. At the time, there was a culture of fear, of retribution. Faculty, staff, all felt uncomfortable, and even the idea of what folks have alluded to earlier is kind of fake shared governance, where administrators say, well, look, I asked my colleague down the hall. We didn't even have that. Decisions were just being made, and then we were being informed about these decisions. One really interesting example was, I'm not sure whether you've seen the ads about this, I know I've seen them up in the Salt Lake area. The 3-year college degree was one that was rolled out by our university president at the time. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, the basic idea was we're going to condense all of the semesters down to the minimum allowable contact hours so that we can create a 3rd semester in the summer and then just get students through as fast as possible, right? They don't have to waste the summer doing other things. They can hurry up and get a job. Now, that sounds maybe useful for some folks, I don't know. But this was kind of explained to us in a meeting where no one on the faculty had heard anything about this at all. And this was an initiative from our university president. Former university president, yes, apologies. But one of the things that our former president did to insulate himself from criticism at the time was he brought in the senators who agreed to give the university extra money. And he framed it in terms of allowing faculty to earn more money. And so there's this kind of misrepresentation of what the initiative was, about how it came about, and then there was this suggestion perhaps that faculty would be moved to 11-month contracts, which he ended up walking back, thankfully, and we are no longer compelled to do these sorts of things. Never were, fortunately. So that was kind of the culture at SUU. Now, the other part of the culture at SUU that I wanted to highlight is that you might be able to tell just from looking at me that I'm not from here. You know, I have visible tattoos, I have, you know, bright pink hair. I grew up in Michigan, and Michigan, as you may know, is a good old school union state. And so I thought, cool, you know, even very conservative folks in Michigan are firm believers in the power of a good labor union. And so I thought, great, you know, Southern Utah, it's going to be the same kind of a thing. And boy, was I wrong. The response, even from people who I trusted and who I had talked to in advance, when I said, okay, I'm actually going to start this union thing, was, listen, I agree with everything that you're saying. I agree with your criticisms of the administration. I'm on board with everything that's going on, but I will never sign up for a union. And that was the response. And so that's kind of what we've been up against. Hence, a friendly face, right? There's this stigma, there are these stereotypes about the union thug, as Brad has been called.
Those helpful union guys, it's an acronym.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, fantastic. So I want to kind of point out some of the ways in which we've, if you want to jump to the next slide, we've been antagonistic. Including very, very recently. We've published a number of public letters, and you can find these on social media. You can see them in different places, starting with COVID, right? Because we started the union right before COVID, and so that seemed like the great time to jump in. And our then new provost had come in and said, oh, I'm really interested in shared governance. So he took a poll of the faculty and said, how many of you want a mask or vaccine mandate? And it was something like 97% of faculty and 60% of staff said, yes, please, let's do it. And he said, no, we're not going to. Sounds like shared governance to me. We also have issues about pay equity. There were things that we pointed out about our most recent presidential search. We have concerns about shared governance. And very recently, if you followed the news at all, there's of course been some, we'll say, kerfuffle about our commencement speaker this year. And we don't need to get into all the details there, but we have some thoughts about it, and you can feel free to read those in our open letter that we published last week.
Follow us on Twitter. It's a
Follow
great
us on
time.
Twitter. So the question is, you know, we have this seemingly very antagonistic sort of relationship that's been, the chapter was created out of frustration. It has existed principally in frustration and as a way for faculty to sort of push back. But it doesn't have to be that way, and we don't want it to just be that. Shared governance should be, in fact, shared. And so this is our sort of thinking behind trying to create this FAST fund, which in some ways we hope will bring together disparate groups and show that we do, in some ways, have shared interests. Now that can get tricky, and we'll say more about that in a moment. So, what is the FAST Fund? Let's turn it over to Lindsey.
Yeah, and I would say this FAST Fund, this actually came really kind of at a perfect time because we just this year have our first brand new president, President Mindy Benson. In 125 years in SUU history, she is the first female president to ever be at SUU. And one of the things that she made very, very clear when she came in was that she wanted to work with faculty and students. And going off of your provost this morning, he discussed how shared governance should be about trust and it should be about mutual respect. Well, I'm a little old school and I'm a fairly blunt person, and one of the things that I told our president when she first came in was I said, too long administrators have relied on titles as the means of their respect. Your title means nothing to me. What basically garners my respect is your actions. You basically tell me who you are by the actions you will take for what you'll stand up from and the truths that you tell. And invited her to basically put her money where her mouth was and said, let's see how we work together. And so the FAST Fund really became a great way for us to do that. First off, let's talk about the organization that this comes from. Believe in Students, basically the entire idea behind Believe in Students was students need help with basic needs: food security, housing, transportation, family issues, medical issues. All of these things happen. It's estimated that close to 6 million students will have some sort of a food, housing, or transportation insecurity in their time in college. As soon as that happens, the chances that they will actually stay and complete their degree go down. These are massive barriers, and COVID has really only expanded these barriers in every way, from dealing with inflation to one of our fun new things we've been dealing with in Southern Utah is all of a sudden California and Las Vegas figured out that we were a great place to live. This has driven up rent and housing prices by over 50% in a 3-year period. So it's just gone massively through the roof. And this gave us an opportunity to say, how are we going to help students? Because how do you put students on a campus to take classes if they can't rent an apartment? Right? And this is where we went directly and said, let's see ways that we can work with the administration, because teachers need students to teach, administration needs students to pay tuition, so they can pay us. So Believe in Students is all about providing those kind of basic needs. Now, within Believe in Students, there is what they call the FAST Fund. And the idea behind the FAST Fund is that when problems occur, there are multiple different types of university support services. There's financial aid services, there are counseling. However, there are problems with those services for students. First off, if it's coming from the university, it has to be reported as some type of financial aid. Second, that requires paperwork, which takes a long time. Third, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a student, I really didn't know who a dean of students was. I didn't know who a VP of student affairs was. I didn't really even know who the president of my college was. And these are the people who control that money and those funds. So even though there's maybe a nice sized pot of cash sitting there to help these students, they have no idea it exists or how to access it in any way. So what the FAST Fund does is it says we're going to put power in the hands of faculty. Because I'm sure if I did a straw poll in here really quickly and asked you, how many of you just this year have had a student walk into your office in tears because something has happened? Either the death of a family member, they're having a problem with their apartment, their car broke down or got broken into, something like that has happened. Would you guys help me out? How many of you have had a situation like this? Okay. So what do we do as faculty? We're in this job because we want students to get degrees and we want them to persist. And so a lot of times, what do? We take on the load and we try to help them. And this is, some great examples. I had, like I said, a student came into my office, brand new freshman. She'd been in college 2 weeks. Locked herself out of her apartment. Off-campus apartment. She called the land company, and they told her, well, the person who has your keys is out of town. So you have two options. You can either go sleep on a friend's couch for 3 days until they get back, or you can pay for a locksmith to come and open up the door. And you can pay for it yourself. She had no money. I tried to access campus services to get her help. People were out of town, couldn't get a phone call back, anything along those lines. So what did I do? I called a lock shop I knew. I handed them my credit card and said, go let her in her room. Because she was ready to have a mental breakdown over the fact that she couldn't get into her bedroom. And $40 for a locksmith was nothing to me compared to that person's mental health. But we're being put in those positions. So wouldn't it be amazing if we could go, you know what, I have resources at my fingertips. All I have to do is send a text message to a colleague and we can get this taken care of in 48 hours at the max. That's an amazing opportunity. And so this FAST fund, we designed to fill those gaps in our own university's kind of support services and basically help students when they need it, when they need it.
Yeah, exactly. And just to give another example of this kind of thing happening, I mean, some of you here are students, maybe you can identify with this, but I had a situation where I had a student come into my office who had been struggling in my class, and I had sent him an email and said, like, hey, what's going on? Just stop by, let's talk, I'm happy to work with you. And the student said, yeah, I need certain medication, and it's impacting my ability to focus, and I can't really do the work, and I just can't afford to get the prescription. It's ready to be picked up, I just don't have the money. And again, we could go and we'll kind of lay out some of the options that we have available at our school, which are great, but this is a student who's just thinking like, well, yeah, I'm out of luck until, I don't know, 2 weeks from now I get paid and I can go pick up my prescription. But by then, it's too late. The students missed 2 weeks of classes and it's horrible and it's terrible to try to catch up, and of course, we all know how this goes. And so these things where I was like, fine, I'll go get you your prescription. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm an especially good person or something, but it's one of these things where it's like they came to me and told me that, and it's unclear what else there is to be done. And so in addition to the financial sort of burden that this ends up creating for faculty who are often overworked and underpaid, as we've kind of heard, right, it also creates this kind of emotional burden for faculty as well. And so that additional work is just this other layer that is sort of unfair and unnecessary. And again, we do have these other options, and we're going to walk through them in just a moment here at our school, and it's awesome. But if students do know who our Dean of Students is, and she's marvelous, she's a really thoughtful, wonderful woman, but if they know her, chances are pretty good they know her because of some sort of disciplinary thing. You don't get called into the Dean of Students' office because you're smiling too much in class, I'm guessing. And so why would they go to that person who's in a position of authority, who's going to be disciplinary, or who's going to be a disciplinarian, when they have these connections with faculty, right? They're going to come to us. And so that's why I think this is a particularly powerful thing. So all I'm saying is we shouldn't be in this position in the first place. So that's why we created this. And this is one way in which we think that AFT and having this through AFT can sort of help recruit and help students, it can help faculty, it helps everyone, right? And so that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, so basically the process is twice a year you will have, Believe in Students will put out a call for applications. The application is simple. I think it was, when we typed it out before we turned it in, we typed out maybe a page and a half of single-space text. They ask you to identify what services exist at your school, what holes that you see in those services, and how you want to try and ultimately fill those with FAST Fund money. They will then, if your application is accepted, give you a $5,000 seed grant so that you can go forward and start your own FAST Fund at your university. That money is not held in the school at all. You go set up a 501c3 bank account. Every person who is on our committee has a debit card on this account, and also the ability to move money via Venmo out of the account into try to avoid students' accounts, but if it's, for instance, to their landlord and their landlord is paid through Venmo, we just send the money over. This is what allows us to do it so quickly. We have a panel of 3 faculty. We send a text message, or 4, we're at 4 now. We have 4 faculty. We send a text message and say, here's the situation, do you agree? Yes, it's done. Now, this has been something that we got the 5,000 seed grant. The College Council has kicked in another $1,000 for us. And when we got this, we actually said, you know what? Here's our chance. Let's tell SUU, put your money where your mouth is. Are you going to work with faculty and students? And we went and scheduled a meeting with our president and with our dean of students and said, let's talk about this. Can we do this together? And the coolest conversation came out of this. The reason, first, that I'm going to say this is different than these kind of other sources of funding that we have for students. First off, students are not required to prove their poverty for this. We do not say, what is your financial status, how much do you make, none of that. It is, your need is enough. And we provide the money. It's confidential. We cannot, per the FAFSA rules, disclose their name to the university, so it in no way impacts their financial aid. We also ask for the smallest amount of information possible. Basically, we ask them for their name, their T number, phone number for tracking purposes, what they need the money for, and we ask them to upload some type of a bill or receipt where we can help them out. That's about it. For faculty, as we've said, service takes time. We're all overworked. Once you get the hardest part that you will do in this is setting up a bank account. Once this is done, since we are under the 501c3 through Believe in Students, they file the tax paperwork and they take care of all of that administrative material for us. They have set up give butter pages for us for donations, and they also organize national campaigns to help get donations. So in terms of once that bank account is set up, this is something that takes such a minimal administrative effort from faculty, and it has so much power. So it's great for us. And so in our conversations with our Dean of Student and our President, what we found out, was that there are multiple levels of aid, and the best way that we could work together was to say, we're going to create a network where whether the student shows up in the president's office, whether they come to a faculty member, whether they go to a student advisor, whether they do, we know a place to send them. And we are going to say, okay, of these different sources of income, there's rules associated with them, we will direct them to the correct one. So for instance, we actually have what's called the T-Bird Strong Fund. In some ways it's similar. This actually was established due to COVID as well as the summer of 2021. You may have seen the floods in southern Utah. That was fun. We had students who had just moved into the dorms basically lost everything because the floodwater just took out their apartments. This fund is great for large amounts of money. They tend to have larger kind of chunks of cash. However, it does affect financial aid, and it's a slower process. So if there's maybe, we know about a rent issue that is not due for 2 weeks, they can handle that. If it's I need my medication now because I can't afford my insulin, that's us, right? We can help pay for one prescription of insulin in 24 hours. And so it's allowed us to work together. And because of creating this network, we are actually now going to be on funding notices that go out to alumni, even though this is something that is controlled by a union. They're going to help us to raise money through different associations, and they are actually committing, a lot of our administrators are committing money themselves into this fund. So this was a great chance for us to actually come in and say, hey, here's a chance where we can work together, because we both believe in supporting our students and taking care of them and making sure that they finish their degrees. And here's an opportunity for us to not be antagonistic.
So what can we learn from this? I think there are a couple of different things. First and foremost, and I'm going to say this in a very particular way, faculty faculty working conditions or teaching conditions are student learning conditions, okay? And when I say that, I mean that in the strongest possible sense. As a philosopher, I'm going to be as clear as I can be. That is the is of identity, for those of you who remember Bill Clinton. Okay, thank you to the one person who laughed at my horrible jokes. Appreciate it. Yeah, so that being an identity, right, I'm talking about the same thing under two different descriptions. So faculty working conditions are the conditions under which students are learning, and student learning conditions are the circumstances under which faculty are teaching. And we need to remember that. And so if students are struggling and faculty are struggling, then everybody loses in this situation. And so one of the things that we need to remember is that students, there's all kinds of data, and I need not remind all of you of this, that show that students tend to learn better when they have personal relationships, in a professional sense, that is, with their instructors, right? If you can build that level of trust, you can build that level of understanding, if you can create those relationships, that's when students are going to flourish, to go back to our Aristotelian metaphor that set this thing off in the first place, right? That's what we want. We want to create and sort of cultivate virtuous students. But if we are overworked, if we are in a position where we don't have the energy or the time or the money to help the students do what they need to do, then it feels like we are failing them and they're not getting everything that they ought to get out of this educational opportunity. Alternatively, if students are in a position where they cannot function because of food insecurity, because of they're concerned about getting kicked out of their apartment because they can't afford their medicine, they're not going to be able to flourish either. And so part of the worry here, and again, part of the idea is we want to try to find shared ground between faculty and administration. And one thing it seems like we all agree on is that we care about students and we want them to do well. We want our students to succeed. And so I like the virtue metaphor, again, from your provost at the beginning of the discussion, in part because what's hard about that is that it's context sensitive. And part of the context here is that we need to engage in the kinds of behaviors that are going to retain faculty, that are going to empower them, and that are going to kind of allow students to flourish as well. So that's one thing. I'll wrap up really fast here. Faculty also typically first contact with students in these situations. We have office hours constantly. Students know us. They are familiar with us. And even in the case where students feel uncomfortable sharing information, they're more comfortable sharing it with us than with maybe perhaps distant administrator. And so again, this is an opportunity for us to sort of empower our colleagues to help students. And again, just to kind of wrap it up, while unionized employees probably often disagree with administrators, and as we've seen, we are a good example of that, we really do agree, kind of in broad brush, about wanting to help students. And this is one way in which we can absolutely do that. So thank you very much for hearing this talk.
I'm going to hand the mic over to Brad, and then we'll circulate it for questions around the room.
Yeah, well, we're good. I'm gonna be brief. No, don't be sorry. What they shared is extremely important, showing the power of the union. I was at the national convention when this Fast Ones was presented, and my two wonderful union family here, they jumped right on it, and it was amazing what they've done with that. So I wanted you to hear about that. Very quickly, show of hands, kind of get a feel of the room here, is how many of you, and you can be honest, is how many of you knew that faculty and staff in higher education have a union that represents them? Okay, great. How many of you knew that you have a full-time lobbyist or lobbyist at the legislature that actually goes and fights for your rights and makes sure that there's good legislation? Great. Good. Now, more you need to raise your hand, and we need to educate you on that. And so, or your colleagues. This is what I run into the most. is as I go and we're out, or our officers, union officers, are out and about, the thing that we hear the most is, oh, I didn't know we had a union. Sometimes I hear, oh, I didn't know we had a union in Utah. Oh, I didn't know unions exist anymore. I thought those were done in the 70s. I have heard all sorts of things, and no offense, I appreciate all you students. You are like the activists now. How many of you heard about Starbucks organizing? Amazon. Guess what? That's all done by 20-somethings and 30s. The new union density and the big push right now is with the younger generation. They're activists, so I appreciate you all so much because you get involved. And it's amazing that the labor movement now is having more of a resurgence than it did since the 70s. More people are joining unions, more people are organizing, and we've come to find out that, you know what, workers need a voice. And that's what we do. That's what we're unique about doing, is we give workers, employees a voice. Nothing against the employers, but you know what? We can do things as a union that the employers can't. All right? And especially legislative, speaking to the good provost today, we know what we have to do at the Capitol together with higher education and admin in higher education and the USHE system and all those involved. It's a whole new structure now to higher ed. And you have to walk a fine line in the legislature, especially when you're in admin or they control the purse strings. You got to watch what you say. I don't have to watch what we say. We advocate directly for you. Now, this is how we lobby. We're full-time during the session and the interim session. The session is 45 days. It's quick, it's down, it's fast, it's dirty, it's cutthroat, and y'all come out of that very, very exhausted. Legislators come out exhausted. Lobbyists definitely come out exhausted. And, I see my wife once in a great while at 45 days. She's like, have a good vacation. We'll see you when you get home. We don't get home very often. We're always in attendance, and we testify in committees on your behalf. So what we do is, if there's legislation that's coming out, we go, we work through our union leaders, we send emails out. I know a lot of people don't emails. I love text. I use text a lot. And we get input. All right, this is what the legislation is. This is how it affects you. This is how it affects higher ed. I need your input on this. And then we go to work. We testify in committees. We bring people out to committees. We ask people to attend committees with us at the legislature and testify. And I'll share some things, some wins that we have with that. We meet individually with legislators. A lot of our work is just one-on-one, face-to-face, building relationships with legislators. Even if they are way opposed and on the other side philosophically or politically or whatever they think of unions. And again, I wear being a thug as a badge of honor. When I can walk into a committee and they're like, oh great, the union thug's here. It's like, thank you. Appreciate that. Now you know. But we do build those relationships with them, and we have one-on-one conversations and try to work with those relationships. The only thing that I and my VP, Rita, if you'll stand up, Rita's my VP of Political Action, we lobby together. The only thing that we have is our word and our integrity. And that's important to us up on the Hill. And so we're up front, we're honest, and we just have these good conversations with legislators, let them know where we're at and what we need. We track legislation, every bill. 180 bills, Rita, is that about what we were tracking this year? And it covers everything from K through 12 to higher ed to public employees. Because we cover all three. What's that?
I gave you glasses just because of this session.
Definitely. Conduct petition and letter writing actions through Action Network. I'll explain how that worked a little bit this year. Solicit resources from national unions and community organizations. So it's not just us. And when I say national unions, a lot of people are like, okay, well, you're AFT, and okay, you represent that. We're also a member of the Utah AFL-CIO. We have 40,000 union members in the state. So I bring steelworkers with me, I bring Teamsters with me, I bring police, firefighters, all sorts. And when we get together, it's extremely powerful what we can do, and we're all in this together in solidarity. Organize rallies, informational pickets. We just had one that was done just at the VA for the AFGE and the federal government just yesterday. So we go and we do these things, and then we write legislation and we propose amendments, and we get those infused into legislation. So we had, luckily, all wins except one this session when it affected higher ed. I'm not going to go through each one of these bills, but some of the ones that there were some great bills that we supported. Legislators did some good things, everything from residency amendments and residency for students that would include more students and a diversity of students. We had financial aid that we supported to bring more money into higher ed and allowed students to be able to attend college and the universities. Recognitions of international baccalaureate programs and some of the concurrent enrollment things. We supported a lot of great bills. But then we had some others that were a little rough. And those came right at the end of the session. There was pushes to get rid of the diversity centers, I don't know if they're called centers. Yeah, the diversity centers on campuses. There was a push for diversity, equity, and inclusion to get rid of that. There was proposed legislation, didn't quite come out, they changed the name of it, but you know, this threat that students are getting indoctrinated on campuses and horrible things like CRT is being taught, critical race theory. Okay, there's been a lot of things. There was some right at the end. These all came within 2 weeks. And working with those that were lobbying from USHE, those from the different campuses that were there. Again, like I said, is higher ed administration and the USHE system have to be careful. They do great work, I'm not saying that they don't behind the scenes. They do some compromises and they work through some things, but they can't be quite as vocal as my professors can. And darn it, she's not here. But one of our, she's here. One of our good professors testified on one of these bills, and it made a huge difference. And the pressure that we put on was incredible. There was a bill that was going to not allow any employee to have union dues withdrawn from their payroll, which is one way that union dues are easily taken out. But it was even more than that. It was an anti-union bill that we couldn't do anything on campuses as far as unions go. No meetings, no anything. It was just a direct attack that we see across the nation. It's a political agenda, and that did not make it even out of House rules to a committee, because within 1 day mobilizing, 500 letters went to those committee members and leadership in both the Senate and the House, and we just flooded that. And the sponsor said, I'm going to do this anyway, and leadership said, no, you're not. Because, and as it was stated is, do you realize that labor has mobilized on this? And we have Teamsters from the from the East Coast and the West Coast. And then we have steel workers from the East Coast and West Coast that are getting charter buses ready to come and storm the Capitol and be here to protest. If you've ever seen steel workers and Teamsters, Teamsters are great because they'll always show up. We've threatened before to have some strikes in K through 12, or just if anybody wanted to do a strike. Not that it's legal, but you know, wildcat strikes happen and we're going to support them. Teamsters are like, oh yeah, we'll jump on that because guess what? We own UPS. We won't deliver anything to the school. Darn. Just got busy that day. There's a lot that can happen. Steel workers, construction workers, building going on campuses or in the public system, they won't cross picket lines. Work stops. If you've ever seen anything happen, look at LA this week, or last week, sorry. The strikes that shut down a school system. 65,000 showed up to walk the picket lines. 65,000. And within 1 day strike, all the demands were met. And you know what the strike was for? So that classified or support staff employees could make more than $25,000 a year living in LA. Bus driver, and you only make $25,000 a year. It's way below the poverty line. It was a fight, a righteous fight. I always believe I'm doing God's work with this. It was a righteous fight, and you know what? It was to improve families, to improve their situation. And all the unions came together, and citizens, to support the public schools. So this is the power. The one that we lost, and I say we, I was working with a lot of different people and on different groups. Proposal to amend Utah's Constitution and the income tax. That has now become a ballot initiative that we all get a vote on. And I think it was 2024's election in November. You can decide if you want the income tax change. Income tax supports and helps pay for the public schools and a couple other social services and higher ed. Big chunk of change comes out for higher ed through the income tax. What they tied to that, the legislature, they did a lot of this year, is they would tie another issue onto an issue. So, hey, we're going to change the income tax, but to make sure that this kind of passes, we're going to sweeten the deal a little bit. We're going to get rid of the food tax. But if it doesn't pass, we're not going to get rid of the food tax. That's to put pressure on voters. And so, we're telling you to vote no. But on that and asking you. But because that is an important income sum. So that is the one thing that the people get to vote on. So I feel very good about all the wins that we had and all the losses. But I have been told by legislators that those that were pushing these bills and these ones that were not so good, they're going to be back. And they're going to continue to fight. And so we're going to continue to fight. So what do? You can be involved. First thing we have to do on campus is join the union, bottom line, and organize on campuses. You can have a voice. This is what is happening across the United States. I love my union sister, AAUP. We're together in solidarity. We're ready to build our chapters for AAUP. We already have a local for AFT. We're going to work out those, how to combine that so that we can have both on campuses and work together. You are stronger together in solidarity. Even if you may not philosophically agree with some of the political stances of the National Union and some things like that, you may look at that and say, oh, a union, I don't know. Oh, those dues are kind of expensive, which I don't think they're that expensive. I paid dues my whole life. Because of the benefits you get and how you can offset it with discounts and things like that. The bottom line is we can do more together and have more of a voice legislatively, working together as we heard with our good faculty senate members, and working hand in hand to deal with things on a local level. But again, our faculty senates do such a great job with what happens policy here, but they can't do anything in that capacity as faculty senate, except share with the administration of the lobbyists, and they're going to try at the university to go and try some things and work at it. But you know what? We directly go for them and be a voice. And then when we come together, you're going to see great things like this. It's not all bad. It's not always adversarial. And it's a really good thing to come together and to change people's lives and to work together. You can serve on political action committees. Especially at the work site, you can be political. I keep hearing this, and I haven't seen policy on it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've read a lot of policies. And I hear from faculty and staff that, we can't say anything political because we'll get fired. You can't speak for the university, is that right, Provost? That is correct. We can't speak for the university, but you as an individual professor can go and say, this is what my situation is. This is what I deal with every day, professionally, as a professor or as a staff member, in the registrar's office or wherever. This is what I deal with. This is the reality. I can put you in front of those legislators. You can testify in committee, and I can hook you up. And you can have your voice. Because they want to know, and people need to know what we're going through at the ground level. Yeah, you don't speak for the university, but you can speak for yourself. It's not illegal. It's not against policy. And you have the right to do that, and we can help you do that. But then we can come collectively as a voice. Last thought here, how many of you really know what right to work means? All right, tell me, Lydia, what's right to work? I'll put you on the spot. Right to work means you don't have to join a union or you can't join a union. We have the right to organize in the state of Utah. We have the right to organize on campuses. We have the right to meet and do all this. It's underneath code. There's this really weird thing though, under right to work. And it is unconstitutional, according to the state. There's a state or higher ed board rule that there can be no collective bargaining, and we heard that from PACE, right? Said, guys, thanks for collective bargaining. We have the right to collective bargain. But we can't challenge this with legislators unless we have more people. So that's my shout out to you, is if you want a contract like K through 12 has, and you want to be able to collective bargain and have all those protections in place, or like public employees have, then you have to get together. We have to have over 50% plus one is what we shoot for. And I've been promised by my friends and colleagues at the legislature that they will work on board rules. But we have to have the people in place and we have to have the numbers. So I'm saying, put up or shut up. Hope that's not offensive. I mean it in all the kind possible way. I hear a lot of complaints. I hear there's nothing we can do. Oh, I'm frustrated. Oh, I don't have a voice. I'm giving you a way to have a voice. I'm giving you a way to be actively involved. I'm Legion of Water. I can't make you drink, but I would sure love you drinking gallons because we need each other, okay? So come to the table, come be involved, sign up, and I promise you, whatever you want to do, from bringing napkins and a bag of chips to a union meeting, to being on an executive board, to helping us lobby, whatever you want to do in the union, we have a place for you to get actively involved. We outnumber them. And when I say them, anyone that's opposing our rights, our ability to be, to have our profession, our ability to teach, to do what we need to do, we outnumber them, but we just have to come together. So that went after public ed. Nationally and at the state level, they're coming after us. And you know what I got told? We have tenure. We have shared governance. This whole symposium today has talked about our issues with this. The time is here. The time is now. If you want to make a change, let's make it together. Thank you.
A little time, very small for questions. Thank you guys so much. And come to the table, the literal table, right back there afterwards. Who's got a question?
Any questions? We'll answer anything. I don't work for the university. I'm okay. I won't get fired.
I have regarding the student safe, what was the fund called? Fast Fund. So, time, and I'm like, so like, are people on your committee like paying the bill? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, how does that transaction happen?
Think of it as the level if you had a friend and they needed to borrow $20.
Yeah.
That's literally the level that this is at. The student goes to a faculty member, they shoot us an email, say, hey, I have a situation. We say, great, have the student fill out this Google Doc form. If there's a Venmo link, put the Venmo link. We do it from our cell phone and it's done. We, I think twice a year, have to send in a spreadsheet with how many students have gotten the money and where it's necessarily gone. And we do a call once a year. That's it.
And just to add to that, we typically pay the vendor directly. So,
That's, I wonder.
yeah, so,
Make sure that it's actually going to help the student rather than.
Exactly. So if a student, needs to get their tires replaced or something, they get a flat tire, they need a new one, we just go to the tire shop or mechanic and just swipe our debit card and then it's done.
Like one of your committee members personally goes and.
Yep.
I mean, in Cedar City, everything's within a 10-minute drive. So, most of us can do it on our way home from work that night. There's like 3 pharmacies, so if they have a prescription issue, we just go with, so it's
as adjunct faculty, I'm outnumbered in this forum, but I thought I'd take advantage of that fact to ask, is anybody here willing to comment on exactly how much risk I'm taking by stepping forward if I decide to do this?
So I would say the thing that we've told our colleagues is that we have our union roster. That does not have to be made publicly available. It is not required in any way. So we have